As we continue in the topic of fear, let me remind you where we were last week. The fear destroys our ability to do what God wants in our lives. And Satan works that with everything inside of him. That's why, because Satan is irrational, fear is irrational. When we stop and think about it, and again, we are taught there's nothing in the dark that isn't there in the light. But it is that fear of unknown that causes us to be concerned in the dark. I admit to people, if you can tell the hesitation in my voice, I admit to people that I have a terrible fear of heights. I conquered it in some things. Flying was one of those. Sitting on the airplane, looking out the window, realizing that I was thousands of feet in the air. But it's a different feeling when you're in an airplane than it is when you are sitting in a seat in the upper level of a baseball stadium. The feeling, and now that's high, but climbing up a ladder is intimidating to me. Well, that's silly, isn't it? Well, I talked to you earlier in this discussion. I talked to you about the young lady when we got into fear in our Sunday school class, and she was like a 7th or 8th grader. And she said to me, Mike, that my fear is irrational. And I was like, well, of course it's irrational. Of course. Fear is based on wrong thinking. However, even though we know it is irrational, it doesn't change the reality of the effect. Because, let me tell you something, you can stand underneath of a ladder that I'm up 3 steps on and tell me how silly it is for me to be fearful. Does that change what is going on inside of me? No. And we have this when we're born, we have fear of, and I've probably talked about this in other messages, when we're born we have fear of loud noises, and we have fear of being dropped. That's where our fear, no other fear really exists in us because we haven't learned to be fearful. So what I just said to you, fear is a learned attitude. It's not natural. It is learned in us to be fearful.